Alright, so if you're anything like me, you are more drawn to matte eyeshadow palettes as a whole. Not to say that I don't love a shimmery eyeshadow, but I'm always super impressed when a company does a great job with their matte formulas. And honestly, I love a good all matte eyeshadow palette, and there aren't that many on the market. A lot of them have some sort of shimmer or some sort of reflective quality to them, and so I went through and found a bunch of eyeshadow palettes that I'm going to kind of show you and talk about, and I'll also be showing swatches probably in one of the corners of each of the palettes, and talk about what I like about them, what I dislike, all of that. So we're going to start with my top 5. So these are the matte palettes that I just liked the best overall. So starting with number 5, we have the Makeup by Mario Master Mattes palette. Now, the reason this is number 5, I love this palette. There's nothing wrong with this palette. It is beautiful. It applies beautifully. I know some people don't like that you have to build it up, but it makes for a really beautiful finish, and this is great for brides. It's great for everyday looks. It's very, very versatile, and the pigments are very smooth. Even when I was swatching them, there's not a lot of fallout. Yes, they do have to be built up, but even when you build them up, they are beautiful and very, very easy to blend. So I put this at number 5. So I feel like, as far as my favorites are concerned, some of them I ranked higher because I am looking for certain things with eyeshadows. I want them to be super, super pigmented, which is part of the reason that my rankings are the way they are. I don't want to have to deal with a ton of fallout. However, if the trade-off is good colors and really a smooth blendable formula, I'll take it. I want them to show up on my skin. Sometimes, don't you just hate it when you swatch on that formula and nothing shows up? I hate that. Especially with my skin tone, sometimes just they don't show up very well. You'll see that with a couple of the matte shadow palettes that I picked up, is that some of them just didn't show color all that well. So number 4 is the UnGilded Most Loved Mattes palette by Milani. Now, this one, they're weird, like drugstore makeup. I will say this is the only palette that I included from the drugstore. Not that there's not drugstore palettes that I think are great, but as far as the mattes are concerned, I found that these ones were the best of the mattes. The reason that I ranked these higher is because I felt like the color story was just a little bit nicer in this one. I also felt like they were very smooth and super, super pigmented as well. These are just really easy to work with and you can't go wrong. But I really, really love this, and honestly, it's a very pretty, like neutral leaning palette with some pops of color with the orange and some pink, which I think is beautiful. I will say there's a couple of shades that when I swatched, they basically disappeared on my skin. I believe like this one was pretty much non-existent on my skin. I want to say it was this one. It might have been a different one, and I'll show you in the swatches, but that was the only downside I feel like to this palette. Alright, number 3. This one is fairly new to me, and I'm wearing a combination of this one and the top palette on my eyeballs. But this is the Violet Voss Matte Vibes palette. Okay, I love these. They're a very, very smooth formula. The pan size is really large. They're very easy to work with. They're blendable. I really enjoyed these. I believe this one basically disappeared on my skin too, but that happens with like this particular tone on me. It just shows up as flesh toned. So I mean, like, not a big deal. But these were so pigmented, so easy to work with. Like I said, I am wearing a combination of this on my eyes and something else. There's next to no fallout with these, which I really enjoyed, and the payoff was great. Honestly, a lot of these I feel like the order can be just switched around because I like all of these palettes for different reasons. And I really like this one, and the color payoff is amazing. Very little fallout. Just a beautiful, beautiful palette. Second, we have, if you've never bought these palettes, you're missing out. Dose of Colors has these 5-pan palettes in their collection. And part of the reason that I put this as number 2 is their color selections. I actually have 2 different ones from them. I have the Sassy Siennas, and this is like Blushing Berries, the first one I showed you. But part of the reason that I love them so much, maybe if I cannot blind you, part of the reason that I love them so much is because of their choice in color. They're not just boring old mattes. Like, yes, this one is on the warmer side, and this one, but this one's more pinky, which I feel like sometimes matte shadows don't do a good job of this. The one thing that makes these kind of difficult, and I still ranked it higher because of the color choices, because they just have amazing color choices for being matte formulas. These have so much fallout. They are crazy pigmented. They also have a lot of fallout. So if you're worried about that, I would stay away from these. But as far as like formulation wise, they're very soft. They're easy to blend. They do have fallout, however, that doesn't bother me because I actually always do my eye makeup and then do my face makeup. So it's not really a huge deal to me. But if that bothers you, I would stay away from this. However, this has my heart because this is the perfect amount of color for me while still being a beautiful matte formula. All right. Top of the list is, and this one is a brand new just makeup item in general. And I have to say, I don't really have a lot of Huda palettes, but I really wanted to try this one. Part of the reason, and I know that these are kind of boring color stories, but I don't get almost any fallout from this. These are so smooth to apply. They just glide on. They are very, very beautiful matte formulas. Yes, it's a little bit of a boring color story, but I have found that you can really make these orange colors like pop and be pretty much straight up orange, which I like that. I like a little bit of color. Honestly, this probably the reason that this ranked the highest is because it's the newest one in my collection. But I have really, really been enjoying this one. I keep picking it up because I love the way that these blend. I do love the formula. I think Huda nailed it with this, like with this palette, with this formula. I know people are like, oh, she's just coming out with the same things over and over. And I will say, I picked up the warmer one because I actually have the New Nudes palette from Huda, and honestly, some of the cool toned colors, I was like, that seems like it could be fairly similar. So I didn't pick up the cool one, but this warm one, I really have been obsessed with this one. If you like a good warm eyeshadow look, you should definitely check this one out. So those were my top 5. I do want to go over some other ones that I swatched. The reason I didn't put them in the top, even though I really like them, as well as some kind of honorable mentions that aren't all matte palettes, but that are beautiful and mostly matte. So, first one's first, is Viseart. Viseart makes these beautiful palettes. And this is the Petite Matte Dark palettes. I love these. The reason that this didn't go into the ranking is more because I've been reaching for those other ones a little bit more. It's not because I don't like this one. I really do. It's beautiful color story. I love that it's not really a rainbow color story, but that it does have like those beautiful pops of color as well. I think that's really unique in a color story. This one does have a little bit of fallout, and again, the only reason it didn't go into my top rankings is because I've been reaching for the other ones slightly more. But this one's beautiful. It is expensive, but beautiful. All right, the next one is the Mad for Mattes palettes. So I have the Jewel Pop one, but there is a more neutral version of this palette. I just do not own it because I tend to like color. This one is also a beautiful palette. I feel like formula-wise, it's not as smooth as some of the other ones, which I love a smooth formula. It applies all right. The pigmentation is all right. It blends all right. Like, I would say that it ticks all of the boxes, but it's not great in all of the boxes. So that's why I didn't put that one in here. It is a good palette and it's very affordable. I believe it's like $10. So this one is a great option if you're just trying to like get some matte eyeshadows that you can try out, or just try out using an all matte eyeshadow palette. This is really a great option, but I will say it didn't even come close to my top 5 because it was just okay all around. Alright, next, this is another one from e.l.f. I had to include it. Oh, every time I open these little bite-sized palettes, I always put like dents in them from my nails. It's so annoying. Alright, so this is an e.l.f. bite-sized palette. Super tiny. In my opinion, not even a little bit worth it for my skin tone. I will say, if you're lighter than you, if you're lighter than you in the summertime, no, I'm just kidding. If you're lighter than me, you might love this palette because it's a very beginner friendly, like one look palette. However, the only one that really showed up on me was this dark one. The rest of them were so close, were like blended in, and this one was just too light for me. It like did not work. And so I almost feel like, and this was $3, so I guess it really wasn't a waste of money because the formula is nice, but I have to say, at least for me, this just, I should have known better. I should have known better than to buy this, but I was thinking, oh, like that might be nice, just a small little eyeshadow palette that you can use on the go, and I love this size of eyeshadow palettes. I have some from LA Girl, I have some from Wet n Wild. I love this size, but this one, I'm like, I should have bought a different palette. This one just hasn't been worth it to me. I probably should actually give this one away to a friend because never gets used. Okay, we're going to go into the Warrior 2 palette from Juvia's Place. If you have ever used, sorry, this one is dirty, but if you've ever used Juvia's Place, you know that the pigmentation is insane. In fact, if you are looking for the blackest black eyeshadow, look no further. Sorry, this one did kind of break, and I pressed it back in, but I've also used a lot of it, so it's a little bit everywhere. But blackest black, like so pigmented, so beautiful. I seriously love love this one. The only reason that this didn't rank higher is a couple of, well, there's a couple of reasons. First is that the color story doesn't speak to me. I feel like you can create some really pretty looks with like this row and maybe like a black combining with those, or like a combination of the top and bottom row, but this row for me just wasn't it. The formulation is okay, the pigment and color payoff is amazing, and they do blend decently. I would put this above the Mad for Mattes palette. I would put it above this one for sure. I definitely think it performs better. I think that it, the color is just way better. However, I feel like the color story is just okay, and for it being a all neutral eyeshadow palette, it should wow me. The only thing is I would, I'm not gonna lie, I would repurchase this palette just for this black. And as you can see, I've used a lot of it. So there's a reason I say that. All right, moving on. And this was my very, very least favorite. I am a little bit just annoyed by this palette in general. I feel like I should have known better because Revolution, I feel like sometimes they have really, really good hits and sometimes they just don't. And this one was so underwhelming. I normally don't mind a super, like, not a super powdery formula, but I normally don't mind a powdery formula, but this one was powdery, it was so much fallout, and it was so unpigmented. I think the only one that showed up great was this pink color, and even then I'm like, I would expect way more out of like this color, this like mauve color, or this purpley brown color. I would have expected way more out of these colors, and there was just nothing. The other thing is this palette, like I haven't even used it that much, and some of them were like hard pan right out of the gate. Like this one, I don't know if you can see, but I literally had to scrape in order to create the swatches because it was so hard pan that it wasn't even coming out, and then the swatch wasn't even that good anyways. I tried with this one and I couldn't get it to work, and I was excited because I was like, okay, well, I don't really want to buy a completely colorful palette and spend a ton of money on it because I don't wear colors like this every day. But a lot of them I was like, I can make that work. I could do something really pretty with it, and I hated this palette. I think that it is not worth it. I think it's only $10, and I honestly feel like you might be better off just throwing your money in the toilet. Well, don't do that, because then you might have to like unclog your toilet, and that seems like a little bit of a waste, but it's not good. I couldn't get this to work. Like the colors are just awful. They're awful. I'll show you what I mean in the swatches. All right, moving on. Now that you know, and if I'm being completely honest, some of them were very, very difficult to find all matte eyeshadow palettes because most companies don't make them. It's not a very common thing. So, moving on. Oh, I almost forgot about this one. These are the LA Girl matte ones. I actually have two. I have a more gray toned one that I bought for something else, and I have this one. This one also wasn't worth it to me. The colors are really soft, but they're not pigmented at all. Like I would rank this one higher than the Makeup Revolution one, which is saying something, which isn't saying much because the Revolution one was horrible. So this one ranks higher than the Revolution one, but almost everything would rank higher than that one. Like these ones were better formulation wise. They were a little bit softer. They weren't hard pan, but they didn't really show up on my skin, which again, it's kind of a me thing because of my deeper skin tone, but frustrating nonetheless, because you would think like some of these colors, like that would be a pretty color, like that seems like it'd be a good transition color. And even this one, like maybe if we could build them up, maybe like an inner corner type thing and like outer, but they just didn't show up well, and I was kind of frustrated with that. All right, let's go into honorable mentions. The reason I wanted to include this is because there were a lot of palettes that had mostly matte eyeshadows but weren't completely matte, but the matte formula it's just really noteworthy. So I wanted to mention them nonetheless. Okay, first, don't hate me because I know this is expensive, but the first is the Natasha Denona the palette. Now, there is only one matte in this, which I think is perfect for this kind of, for like a 5 quad palette. I reach for this constantly. This is probably my most used palette currently. There's others that I reach for a lot, but this is probably my most used. And I honestly, half the time don't even use this shimmer shade, but the formula is beautiful, it's smooth. It's just a really, really good all-around palette. And I like that it's pink and not just like browns. For some reason for me, like I hate just wearing browns by themselves. That's not a very typical look for me unless I'm trying to like mute everything and maybe do like a super bright lip or something. But typically I like my eyeshadow bright, or at least brighter than a brown. All right, another honorable mention. I know people don't really talk about Tarte's eyeshadow, and to be fair, this one is not completely matte either, but it has 2 satin formulas that are in the middle, and it really is very smooth, very easy to blend. Like I said, not completely matte, but it's pretty close, and it's a great neutral palette, and it won't break the bank either. Like, really good colors, really blendable. I don't know why Tarte doesn't get more hype, honestly. I think probably because it was like the first higher end makeup line that I really discovered. I'm like obsessed with everything Tarte, and most people aren't, but I really do like this eyeshadow palette, and I think it's great if you're looking for a matte look, because even their satins, none of them are actually glitter, so it's really, really pretty. All right, another honorable mention. This is the last one, I swear. This one is expensive. It's not as expensive as it could be. The other honorable mention is this one. Again, this is Dior, but this one does have some satin finishes, but they are pigmented. There's not very much fallout. They're smooth. This is a really, really just all around beautiful formula. I have to say, I wasn't super impressed with the cream shadow, but other than that, I really, really like this. And you can create an all matte look fairly easily because there's only actually 2 satin formulas in here, and it's these 2 right in the middle. The rest of them are purely matte shades, and they are beautiful. So that's all I had for you. I hope that you have a better idea of like which matte formulas work well, which ones don't work as well, which ones to completely avoid, and maybe some that are a little bit more budget friendly, but also worth the money. Like I said, I love all makeup in like pretty much no matter what. However, I do gravitate towards matte eyeshadows, and honestly, if they don't have like at least 2 mattes to every like shimmer, I kind of get a little bit frustrated because I don't like an all over shimmer lid. And even if I do use a shimmer, it's like 1 shimmer for like an inner corner highlight, or 1 shimmer for like the inner part of my lid. I don't typically use a lot of shimmer. I want mostly matte eyeshadows, and honestly, it's super unimpressive when you have a beautiful shimmer formula and then your matte formulas are just like, when they're that bad, there's no reason for that. And I get that matte shadows are harder to formulate than shimmer shadows are. I get that, but there's nothing more frustrating than getting an eyeshadow palette and having the pigmentation either not be there or having it just not be smooth or getting hard pan on the very first swatch. So frustrating. And so that's why when I was searching on YouTube, I found that there's not very many people that have talked about purely matte eyeshadow palettes. And so I wanted to share the ones that I have found, the ones that I've of just purely matte eyeshadows. So I hope you enjoyed. I hope you will consider hitting that like button, and I'll see you later. Bye!